My name is Don Will. I'm with the Administrative Office of the Courts, Center for Families, Children in the Courts, and I'd like to welcome you all to our Information Sharing Symposium. Thank you so much for coming. For a lot of us, this has been many years in the making. My job this morning is to introduce our chair of the Blue Ribbon Commission on Children in Foster Care, the Honorable Richard D. Huffman. Much of the work we've done in information sharing in child welfare, foster care, the dependency system, whatever you like to call it, I think came to prominence in the state with the work of the Blue Ribbon Commission on Children in Foster Care. Justice Huffman has been a key part of the commission since the beginning. And recently, Chief Justice Kantil Sakauye named Justice Huffman as the new chair of our Blue Ribbon Commission. Justice Huffman's been a longtime member of the Judicial Council of California, and he's had a distinguished career as a jurist, including judge of the Superior Court of San Diego and Associate Justice of the 4th District Court of Appeals. Now, please join me in welcoming the Honorable Richard D. Huffman.
Thank you very much. I think I'm a lot shorter than that. Good morning, everyone, and I want to welcome you here thank you on behalf of the California Blue Ribbon Commission on Children in Foster Care for joining us here today so that you can continue the real work of making a difference for our families and children in the child welfare system by finding a way past the barriers of information and getting to yes in the state of California, which we'd like to get in a lot of ways in the state of California. I want to give special acknowledgement to a few of our participants. You're all very special, but I want to point out a couple of people. Assemblyman Jim Bell, who is here or is on his way, has been a very important supporter of foster care reform in California. Department of Social Services Director and Blue Ribbon Commissioner Will Lightbourne. Will, good to see you again. And Undersecretary of Health and Human Services David Maxwell Jolly, who's going to be joining us. And I also want to acknowledge that we have participants here from the local county commissions that have been working diligently on our commission's recommendations to make them a reality. And I've had the opportunity to begin the process of visiting those commissions, and I have to say that it's encouraging that we have people at the local level who, usually without any resources but a lot of determination, are continuing to make progress in a difficult time. And I would like to acknowledge the help and support of the members of Stewards for Change, who are helping us begin to build a roadmap to achieve interoperability, that's an interesting word, among California's child welfare partners to improve the outcomes for the state's most vulnerable children and families. You know, as you know, one of the greatest challenges to reforming the juvenile dependency and foster care systems in this state is the difficulty in exchanging data and information among the courts and among the partner agencies. And the difficulty results, of course, from a number of factors. One is the confidentiality laws, and perhaps a great deal of it is the manner in which we interpret and implement those laws, and the automated case management systems that are unable to communicate, can't communicate with each other, let alone communicate with the various agencies around the state, and the lack of communication and collaboration among agencies and between agencies and the courts. As you may know, our Commission in 2008 issued a key recommendation that these agencies and the courts should work cooperatively to ensure optimal sharing of information in order to promote decision-making that actually supports the well-being of children and families in the child welfare system. I believe that this symposium is one giant step towards that realization of that recommendation. You know, as I've said on a number of occasions, with regard to the judicial branch, I don't think there is any more important work than that which is done in the juvenile and family courts. In those courts, the professionals there are charged with making the system responsive to families in crisis. And I would add the incredibly difficult work faced by social workers, educators, healthcare providers, mental health givers, and the others who work with children in our child welfare system. I look forward to a day sometime in the future in which these jobs do not always include the heaviest caseloads and the most limited resources. And hopefully the work that you're doing today will help us towards that dream. As an appellate judge, some accuse appellate judges of losing contact with reality. The truth is, many of us never had any contact with reality. But in order to ameliorate that situation, I've asked the Chief Justice most years, in the 23 years I've been on the appellate court, to assign me to the trial courts to go back and perhaps get a grip on what really goes on. Some years back, I asked and received a little bit longer assignment to the juvenile dependency court. Juvenile dependency work is a major part of the appellate court work in California, but we only see the disasters, those things that have gone wrong enough to reach the appeals court. I found that it was probably the best thing I've done in my judicial time was to spend that time with the dependency courts, and I go back most years since then. Some of the reality you find out, as an appellate judge, you can make as many mistakes as a trial judge. In fact, I can make more than most trial judges. But the other thing you see when you actually get there is these ungodly, crushing caseloads that the courts have, the tremendous work, the burden carried by social workers, and I experienced actually firsthand the life and death nature of the type of work we do. And I became very clearly aware of my firsthand experience of the difficulty trial judges have in making decisions when they lack adequate information to support those decisions. You know, when a child becomes a dependent of the court really steps in, or the judge actually in that court steps into the role of the child's parent. And so think about it from the standpoint of your own kids and what you think you would like to know. Start with something basic. You know, where's the child living? How about that? Or is there someone in the home that poses a safety threat to them? Does the child have current health problems? Is he or she up to date with immunizations? Is the child attending school at all? And if so, how is she doing or he doing? Are there any behavioral issues that I should be aware of? Now, I could suggest to you, my friends, that if we don't know this kind of information, we're really lousy parents. And while social workers do a heroic job, I think, of getting as much information as possible to the courts, they frequently don't have access to critical health and education information. And in our own courts, we can easily access information on such things as whether there's restraining orders that might impact issues of custody and visitation. Which I have to say to you is an acute frustration to not know what's going on in the court building down the road that affects this family and these kids, and have to stop and bring everybody back until we can sort out that little bit of data. Think about how compounded that gets when you look at the whole range of data that impacts the child welfare system. How can we gather this information in one place where the judge, the social worker, the CASA, the attorneys, the child, and the family can review accurate data and make the best decisions possible? The Blue Ribbon Commission recommended tackling these problems on 3 fronts, where there's the major systems involved, particularly the court and child welfare agencies, need to build new case management systems. Duh. Yeah. Wait for that. These systems have to talk to one another and share information, another novel idea. And our attorneys and the key federal agencies need to agree on what information we can share, protecting the confidentiality of children and parents, but allowing the information we need to flow to the judge, the social worker, the doctors, the teachers, and everyone responsible for the well-being of our children. I know most of you in this room share these goals with me, and you've been working very hard to make them a reality. And you might feel a bit discouraged and maybe even a little doubtful about the lofty goal of a well-oiled exchange of information. But you have to ask yourself, is this meeting that you're attending here going to be another one of those that produces a great set of recommendations that get put into binders, that get put onto shelves, and get thoroughly ignored as time goes on? You simply can't let that happen. From my vantage point, the work you've done has brought about real progress. And for the health, safety, and well-being of our children and the state's most vulnerable families, we need to continue that process and reach the goals of valid information sharing. I urge you to make the most of this opportunity that the stewards of change, the Stewart Foundation, the AOC's Center for Family, Children in the Courts, and the Court Improvement Program are giving us today and tomorrow to begin the real change. I'd like you to leave this symposium believing that tangible changes you can make in your organization will equip you with the tools you need to make those changes and to be determined to move forward. But most importantly, I would ask you to leave this meeting with solutions that can be implemented. Don't leave the meeting with ideas that will lead to plans, that will lead to meetings, that will lead to discussion, that will lead to coming back for another symposium to start over again. That just isn't acceptable, and it shouldn't be acceptable to you. So as has been mentioned, I've taken over as the chairman of the Blue Ribbon Commission, and while I've been on the commission since 2006, I've only recently been appointed to this position to replace Justice Carlos Moreno, who did such a marvelous job over the years on issues of children in foster care, and it's a little bit humbling to follow that kind of distinguished service. But I have to say to you, I'm really filled with hope and pride. I'm very hopeful that what I see here is the beginning of, no, not the beginning. This is the implementation of good ideas that are going to make things better and brighter for the children and the families in our state. And I'm proud to work with each of you. And I'm looking forward not only to this symposium, but to working with many of you in the time to come as chair of the Blue Ribbon Commission. So thank you for letting me share these thoughts with you, and thank you for all that you do.
Thank you, Justice Huffman. Our next speaker is someone I'm sure many of you have the same experience I have. If you work in this field and you have a good idea and you start working on it, soon you find that Terry Cook is already managing a program just like your good idea and is way ahead of you in the child welfare reform of almost any kind, but particularly data and information exchange. So I'm very happy to introduce Terry Cook, the Director of Child Welfare at the Stewart Foundation. Terry, you want to come up?
Good morning. It's a little tall. So recently we did at the foundation one of those work style pieces where you figure out how you work with others, and one of the lines that said about me is that if you want to interact well with Terry, you need to be bright, be brief, and be gone. So I hope to actually do that for you this morning. A little bit about the Stewart Foundation, for those of you who don't know. E.A. Stewart created the Carnation Food Company back in the early 1900s, and his family sold the company in the early 1980s to the Nestle Company and created the Stewart Foundation in its current form. So since 1983, we have been funding in both public education and child welfare. My job at the Stewart Foundation, I think of in two primary ways. One is to be a talent scout, look for the best and the brightest, the good ideas. Hopefully, there are some new ones that are popping up, but also to be a good partner, and particularly to be a good partner with public systems. I think private dollars can help get a new idea going, but we do best when we're able to leverage the public dollars and hand off, and then return to our role in putting in some seed funding. So we're very pleased to help co-sponsor this conference. Clearly, we were good talent scouts in finding folks both at Stewards of Change and the folks at AOC who have been just leaders in the state for so long. The foundation has been an investor in data and information for a long time. A couple years ago, I was at a conference and put out a kind of tagline that's been used a lot called irresistible information, because it's truly our belief that we just need to get started, that we may not have, let's not wait for perfect, let's get good. And it's been my experience that when we are able to provide data and link data, people will always want more. So it's, to me, imperative that we start somewhere, that we get that irresistible information, and hopefully in this process make it, it's now going to be 3 I's, incredible irresistible information. So I did look for a quote and found one last night that I think is really important to the work we're going to do here. We know that this kind of data exchange is often long and kind of a slog, and you've got to kind of stick with it. It's not going to be easy or fast, but we've got a huge payoff if we can do so. And so the quote I'll leave you with this morning is that good ideas are not adopted automatically. They must be driven into practice with courageous impatience. So I urge you, be impatient, be courageous, and let's get this done. Thank you.